address the energy issue. That the mortgage thing is what's got us in this. Do you think that's to come yet?
Well, I think that I've always said that what we're talking about doing here is addressing a symptom. We're not addressing the cause, and the cause of why we are where we are is the subprime mortgage crisis. And if we're concerned about people not buying houses, a real smart way to do this would provide a tax credit for people to buy houses. And we've got to address our energy dependence. That is a big problem. $100 oil and $3 gasoline for why the economy is slowing down. And so I'm going to continue to advocate for energy policies, and I guess those would be more perhaps longer term. But these are fundamentals that are creating the problem, and we need to get at those and not just deal with the symptom, which is the slowdown we're starting to experience and witness in the economy. And I think what we're talking about doing here in the Congress with regard to the rebate checks and some of these other things is, frankly, is addressing a symptom and not addressing a cause. And we need to have good long-term policies in place that will help us address the causes of this economic uncertainty that we face right now. And I'm going to push as hard as I can to make sure that we get those kinds of things in place.
Senator, this is Faith Bremner with Gannett. Were you expecting McCain to win the way he did in Florida? And did you go down there and help him campaign? And what are you going to do to help him win big on Super Tuesday?
Well, I got invited to come down to Florida. I couldn't make it because I had some things in South Dakota last weekend, but I did spend a couple days in Iowa and Michigan and South Carolina working with him to try and help him get across the finish line. I think the win in Florida was a very big win for him and positions him well going into Super Tuesday. I've not made any commitments about Super Tuesday states yet in terms of scheduling. I think that when you're talking about 22 states, I'm not sure that any of us probably could contribute too greatly with the short number of days that are left. But I do think that the win that he had coming out of Florida puts him in a very good position, particularly with a number of the states that are going to vote next Tuesday. And I think the presidential election picture could be a lot clearer, both for Republicans and Democrats, starting next Tuesday.
Senator Lee Redding at KVHC in Yankton. Back on the economic stimulus, are there any people or anyone included or excluded in the House-passed version of that bill that would or would not get checks that you'd like to see changes? And I haven't seen a real clear explanation as far as who gets checks and who doesn't.
Well, what the House, there are people who don't get covered. There are a lot of seniors who don't have income or income that don't get checks under the House-passed version. Amendments in the Senate would correct that, and honestly, I mean, that makes some sense, I think. But the way that it works right now, $600 checks for individual, $1,200 checks for married couples, $75,000 limit for individual, and $150,000 for married couple, and then it would phase out after that. So there are income limits that determine who is eligible for this, and you're talking about $600 and $1,200, and then $300 for children, each child, for people who fall within and meet the income limit. So that's basically what the House did. The Senate bill would attempt to, they would lift the caps on income so that everybody is eligible for it. And secondly, and that includes all the seniors who aren't covered under the House version of this. So it's a work in progress, as I said. But again, there are some changes that if the Senate makes them, I think complicate significantly our ability to complete this in a timely way, because we would create a conference with the House. The House would react negatively to some of the changes that the Senate is proposing, and if the important thing here is getting this out there quickly, and we all kind of agree about the general need for the rebate checks, then I think we ought to get those out there as quickly as we can and not prolong this process. So that's a concern that I would have with anything that the Senate does at this point, both in terms of the committee action this afternoon and then on the Senate floor, and then ultimately perhaps in a conference committee if the Senate version is significantly different from the House.
Senator Steve Miller with the Journal in Rapid City. If the March 15th deadline is not met for the Farm Bill, and then we revert to the 1949, is that a 1949 farm program, or what happens then if that happens?
Well, if we don't complete this by March 15th, the extension of the 2002 Farm Bill expires on March 15th, and then we would revert to 1949 law. Actually, there's 1938 law and 1949 law. There are two basic statutes that would apply. And under permanent law, wheat producers would get loan rates at $8.32 a bushel, and corn producers would get loan rates at about $4.12 a bushel. And milk producers would love it too, because I think they get about $28 a hundredweight, and I think that what they're looking at today is about 20. So, but you wouldn't have any conservation title, you wouldn't have any energy title, you wouldn't have any of the policy that's included in this farm bill that is very good for agriculture and for the rural economy. So, reverting to 49 law is just not a good outcome. It's not a good option. But that's where we would be, absent action by the Congress to intervene, either to get the 2007 Farm Bill, now 2008 Farm Bill completed, or to further extend the 2002 Farm Bill. But I just don't think those are we shouldn't be talking about extensions. We shouldn't be talking about a reversion to 1949 law. We ought to be talking about how do we get this done and how do we get it done now. I mean, there's no reason why the conference committee should not be meeting and working out the differences and getting us a bill that we can take to the president.
States again. What are you Republicans in the farm states doing to get the White House to be more accepting of what's been passed? It's a fight really with the White House.
Well, it is to some degree, although we can't. That fight with the White House really doesn't commence until the Congress completes its work, and so to suggest that the reason this isn't happening is because the White House is not being cooperative misses a fundamental point of the legislative process, and that is that we can't. The president can't sign or veto a bill until we give him a bill. And to date, we haven't taken the steps that are necessary to produce a bill. But to your point about the White House's resistance on some of these issues, I mean, we're going to be weighing in heavily with them, and we are. I mean, the Republicans on the Ag Committee and in the Congress who recognize the importance of getting a farm bill signed are trying to work with the White House to get them, and hopefully Secretary Schaefer will help in that respect to take a more constructive approach. The White House has drawn a line in the sand on a couple of issues, and I think they have to be willing to help us find common ground on this. They just can't dig in and say, my way or the highway, and that message is being delivered on an ongoing basis, and I'm hoping that with Secretary Schaefer joining now and engaging in this debate, that we'll see more progress on that front.